Let's talk about professional competence and training. We must take steps to maintain our skills.
Ability is not an easy matter to assess. Striving for competence is a lifelong endeavor. We are called upon to devote the entire span of our careers to developing, achieving, maintaining, and enhancing our competence. Competence at one point in our career doesn't assure competence at a later time. We must take steps to maintain our skills.
In emerging areas of practice, continuing education is particularly important. Being competent in one area of counseling does not mean that we are competent in all areas. Practitioners can develop competence both as a generalist and as a specialist. A generalist is a practitioner who is able to work with a broad range of problems and client populations.
A specialist is a worker who has developed competence in a particular area of practice such as career development, addiction counseling, eating disorders, or family therapy.
Competence means the ability to perform according to the standards of the profession. A diligent professional gives deliberate care to appropriate assessment and intervention for a client's problem and maintains that care until services are completed.
In mental health counseling, ethical issues must be considered from the very beginning, starting with admissions and screening programs for graduate programs. One key issue is the role of training programs in safeguarding the public when it becomes clear that a trainee has problems that are likely to interfere with professional functioning.
The American Counseling Association, 2007. Counselors practice only within the boundaries of their competence, based on their education, training, supervised experience, state and national professional credentials, and appropriate professional experience. Counselors gain knowledge, personal awareness, sensitivity, and skills pertinent to working with a diverse client population. C.2a.
Competence is both an ethical and a legal concept.
Counselors may need to be both generalists and specialists to be competent to practice with some client populations. Psychology does not currently have methods to readily or reliably assess the integration of knowledge, skills, and attitudes in the performance of professional functions that comprise competence.
A degree of license alone does not guarantee competence for any and all psychological services. As mental health professionals, we bear the responsibility of taking adequate steps to ensure that we meet minimal standards of competence. To do so requires that we engage in an ongoing process of self-assessment and self-reflection.
If we are unsure of our ability to provide services in a particular area of practice, it is essential that we consult with colleagues. None of us can be competent with all client populations and settings, or with all skills and techniques. When it becomes clear that a client's counseling needs exceed our competence, we must either develop the competence necessary to effectively treat the client, or refer this client to another professional who possesses the competence to meet this client's counseling needs. Assessment approaches are most effective when they integrate both formative and summative evaluations. Formative assessment is a developmentally informed process that provides useful feedback during one's training and throughout one's professional career. Summative assessment is an endpoint evaluation typically completed at the end of a professional program or when applying for licensure status. Together these assessments address an individual practitioner's strengths and provide useful information for developing remedial education plans, if needed, for the person whose competence is being evaluated.
Those responsible for educating and training mental health professionals are ethically and professionally obligated to balance their roles as advocate and mentor of trainees with a gatekeeping role. One way to manage these sometimes conflicting roles is to thoroughly and accurately provide routine formative and summative assessment for trainees, carefully document these evaluations, and ensure that multiple professionals give independent evaluations of each trainee.
One way to develop or upgrade your skills is to work with colleagues or professionals who have more experience, especially when you branch out into new areas of practice.
As a general rule, seek consultation before moving outside the areas in which you have received education and training. New skills can be learned by attending conferences and conventions, by reading books and professional journal articles, by taking additional courses in areas you do not know well, and in theories that you are not necessarily drawn to, and by participating in workshops that combine didactic work with supervised practice. Even if you are competent in a certain area, you still may need to make referrals if the resources are limited in the setting in which you work. Example, if your work setting limits the number of counseling sessions for clients, develop a list of appropriate, qualified referral resources in your area.
You will need to develop a framework for evaluating when to refer a client, and you will need to learn how to make this referral in such a manner that your client will be open to accepting your suggestion rather than being harmed by it. It is of the utmost importance to make skillful referrals when the limits of your competence are reached, ensuring that clients understand the reason for the referral and do not feel rejected or abandoned. For Dr. Taylor's class, do you have any questions to this point? If not, we will continue.